All advice given is for general information purposes. All legal cases are different, and you should seek the advice of your own attorney before acting or making decisions. No attorney-client privilege applies to communications on this show, and no attorney-client relationship is created by calling or writing in. Attorney Rominger practices only in Pennsylvania and maintains his primary office in Carlisle, Pennsylvania.
Hey, good afternoon. Carl Rominger here, 540-0580. Got a little adrenaline shot in me right now. I was a little late getting here. So, and who governs? I mean, who would put a governor in a truck so it can only go 100 miles an hour? It's ridiculous. I'm kidding. 540-0580. Whatever you guys want to talk about today. Got a legal question? Got a divorce? Want to talk about a contract? Actually, was talking to another lawyer recently about a contract where there's a clause in there for arbitration and a clause for double damages, which would create a situation where you can't really get back what your losses actually are. So remember to read the fine print. Read those contracts over really carefully. So, for instance, if somebody says, oh, yeah, I'm going to help you with a $2 million transaction or a $20,000 transaction, you read the fine print in the contract, and the most you can sue for is $500. It might not make sense to go forward and use that individual as your service provider, because they're not really promising to pay you what it's worth if they goof it up. It's kind of like going to the doctor and having the doctor say, well, no matter how badly I butcher you, you can get $5,000 in lost wages and $5,000 in pain and suffering. Sounds kind of like the caps the legislature wants to pass. 540-0580. Carl Rominger here answering your questions. We're going to talk about FUBAR later in the show. Pat, you're on the air.
Hey, that's nice to be the first one on. Thank you for taking my call.
Not a problem.
Okay, question is, heard somebody about grandparent rights. Is there such a thing?
Well, there are grandparent rights. Now, let's start from the proposition that obviously the parents take precedent, right?
Right,
always. But the legislature has said that where a parent has died, where a parent is incapacitated or unfit, or where both parents are incapacitated or unfit, the grandparents have standing to come forward.
Okay.
Also, in Pennsylvania, if the child has lived in the grandparent's house for at least a year,
right,
even with a parent. So the common scenario we see is mom or dad is down on their luck. The other person's run off or disappeared or in prison, and they move in with grandpa and grandma, stay there 3 years, get back on their feet, meet a new beau or a new belle. And
it sounds just like my story.
Oh, yeah, see, I know. And the new guy's like, oh, it's my kid now.
That's right, yeah, right.
And get them. Well, so once the grandparent's been in for a year, it doesn't give you a right of custody, but gives you a right of visitation, which basically means partial physical custody for purposes of visitation, as a court would award. But basically, the idea being, if you've lived with your grandma and grandpa for over a year, you probably identify enough with them. We presume it's in your best interest to see more of them.
Right. Well, we're trying to keep everybody happy, stay friends with everybody, so we don't have this tug-of-war stuff. But as a precaution, my husband and I had a lawyer help us with a guardianship contract in case the parents, God forbid, would die. So, because I understood he could go into foster care, and he was already going back and forth between two grandparents' homes because these parents had no home.
Yeah, and so absolutely. Well, first of all, in a situation where the parents are unfit or something like that, grandparents can actually get awarded custody.
No. Yeah.
But as long as they spend a year, I mean, the tough one is newborn baby, 8 months old, has been in grandma's house contiguously. Mom moves out, takes baby with her. Now won't give him to grandma. Now, and of course, the law goes, well, it hasn't been a year. You hope that people will try to do the right thing. Yeah,
well, he still is coming back and forth at this point. We want to keep it that way.
Gotcha.
And so people are, down on their luck type things. Where's the jobs? Where's the finish the education? Everybody didn't get their act together before this one came along. It's not his fault.
And it's a tough economy right now. I mean, a couple years ago, I would go to support court or like a support contempt hearing, and the judge would basically look at somebody and go, "You don't have a job. You don't have a job. Okay, well, you're going to jail." Now it's sort of like, well, have you found a job yet? No. Okay, come back in a couple weeks and show me your applications, because you just can't squeeze blood out of turnips, so to speak. And right now the economy's pretty soft.
Yeah, I can hand it to the communities, Mennonite and Amish, where they all live around each other and can help each other.
Yeah, well, there's something to be said for community. All right, Pat, thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Have a good show. Thanks.
All right, Carl Rominger here answering your legal questions, 540-0580. Clint, you're on the air. Hey, Clint.
Yes. A friend of mine was down and out. His car had an accident with his car. I bought a car for him. How should I go about being sure that if something would happen to him, that the car would come to me?
Did you, when you bought the car, did you put him on?
I did not put him on. I'm not on the title. It's titled in his name.
Well, that's your problem, because you should have put yourself on as the lien holder.
Right. Well, that's what now I understand that I should have done that. Is there any other legal document besides that which should be made out?
Well, you could also do what's called a note, which is a promise to pay.
Right.
So generally speaking, anytime there's a debt, like say I'm going to loan you $1,000.
Right.
I would have you sign a note that says you owe me $1,000
right.
and here's the terms of repayment.
Right. Mm-hmm.
A mortgage would be used to secure it against a home or property.
Yes.
A lien holder on a titled item.
To have that retitled.
You could have it retitled with you as the lien holder, yeah.
Okay. I'm sorry. I didn't quite understand what you said.
You could have him retitle it with you as the lien holder.
Oh, right. Mm-hmm. All right. Thank you very much.
All right. Good luck with that, brother.
Bye now.
540-0580. Carl Rominger here answering your legal questions. I had posted on my Facebook, and I promised I would talk about this on the air because people seem to think this was funny. But I was in court the other day as a witness, and it's one of those long stories, but when you play lawyer enough in court, eventually you get called back to court to talk about what happened in court previously in a proceeding. And so in criminal matters, for instance, it's called the Post-Conviction Relief Act, and a client or a party calls lawyers in to testify about what happened in the prior proceedings. And I looked around the room, and just about everybody in there, and besides myself, had military experience, so I just decided to suggest that the case had gone FUBAR, and apparently that tickled everybody pink, and the court reporter is getting me a copy of the transcript and et cetera, et cetera. But if you know what that means, maybe you appreciate why they think it's so funny to say from the witness stand. On the other hand, if you don't know what it means, go to my Facebook page, and probably people can help you translate it there, because I can't tell you what it means here on the air, or the big red button will get hit before I have a chance to do anything about it. But I will say I didn't think it was, it wasn't something I just said. I thought it adequately described the situation at the time. But again, in retrospect, I'm like, oh, yeah, I guess I did say that. Screening a few more callers here. So as soon as we get some, I'll have them up. Also want to remind you, go to RomingerLaw.com anytime you get a chance. You can check out our law firm. You can see the other attorneys. We've got 6 attorneys. We serve the mid-state. Actually, we're all over the mid-state these days. We have an office in Lancaster, Harrisburg, Chambersburg, and Carlisle. We can meet with you as far-flung as Ephrata. So if you get a chance, go to RomingerLaw.com and check it out. Actually, I guess I got to take a break here, don't I? Should I go to break? No? No, not yet? Okay, don't go to break yet. They're telling me not to go to break yet. Steve Snyder.
Yes. Hey, Carl. How are you?
Good. Hey, do you ever do any work, or you just call into this radio show these days?
Yeah, I'm just trying to help out.
What are you up to? What are you working on today?
Today I'm working on a case where a company down in or up in Berks County found out that they have a sizable amount of good quality spring water on their property, and they want to start up a spring water company. And they've asked me to take a look at the laws that regulate businesses in the municipality. So I'm up to my elbows in the Pennsylvania Municipalities Planning Code. Exciting stuff.
Yeah, well, that's somebody's got to actually know about that stuff, right?
Yeah. Yes, it's the law in Pennsylvania that dictates how you can build housing developments or develop property or zone or anything. So I've become a self-proclaimed semi-expert in it.
Well, Steve, why don't you hold on the line? We'll go to break, and when I get back from break, I will we'll answer some callers and see what's going on.
Yeah.
All right, I'll see you guys after the break. Hey, welcome back. I had to do that. They're fining me $500 every time I say hey on the welcome back. 540-0580. John, you're on the air. John.
Oh, yes. Hi, Carl.
Yes, how are you, sir?
I'm good. Got a question. I have a family member that just recently went to prison.
Okay.
And the spouse was wondering about money owed to the lawyer. There's an outstanding balance owed. she is wanting to pay that, and I actually have no problem with that.
Yeah, you better not.
What's that?
So you better not. No, go ahead.
No, exactly, and that's my.
I'm like, what do you want me to say? Don't pay the lawyer? You want me to? What? Are you go? No, go ahead.
That's the question that I have. I thought maybe I should check with somebody else for her.
Here's like. Oh, go ahead. Here's what I'm gonna shortcut you here because I think I know the question. Like, if you're not happy with your criminal lawyer or because you went to jail, should you not pay? Is that kind of the question?
No, the question is she liable for the money? She didn't do anything wrong. She has nothing to do with the crime. He's in jail, and here we are. We have a $15,000 bill that they want. Of course, they want their money, and so I'm telling her, before you pay, let's just double check and see if you have to pay.
Well, no spouse has to pay the other one's sole debt, okay? To the extent that she represented perhaps to the lawyer, or to the extent that the lawyer perhaps had her sign a fee agreement, because, and this just goes to any business person out there, if you're a small business contractor of any sort, and let's say you're going to put tile down in somebody's house, you want the husband and wife to sign the contract. If you pay attention, a lot of bigger companies won't even come out and pitch what they can do for a house, for instance, unless both owners are there to sign. My point being, in Pennsylvania, married couples' property is not reachable for the debts of one. So theoretically, the wife does not have a legal obligation to pay unless she, A, promised, or B, signed something indicating that. Is there a moral obligation to pay? I don't know. I mean, if she wants the lawyer to follow up with her husband later, if there's an issue in the case or something ongoing, I mean, certainly that could become an issue. Although I'm going to criticize the other lawyer because generally in criminal work, we get our money up front. And there's two reasons for that. One is sometimes when people go to jail, they just stop paying. And sometimes it's because they're not happy, but it's also sometimes because they can't at that point.
Exactly.
So usually in the criminal law, if you came to see me and said I have a DUI, blah, 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 and I've known you for 5 years and you're a good client in good standing, et cetera, we might work out a payment arrangement. On the other hand, if you come to me and, you're looking at a 5-year mandatory on a drug case and I don't know you from Adam, I'm going to quote you a fee and I'm going to need that money up front, or else, just go find some other lawyer who's dumb enough to do it up front and wonder how he's going to get paid later. Yeah.
Well, there's a substantial amount paid initially, but there's some money that's still left over. I think I had said to her, it seems to me that if you didn't sign anything, you're probably not liable, but I'm not a lawyer.
Yeah, he's responsible. I mean, the husband's definitely responsible for that debt, but that doesn't make the spouse automatically responsible. Although in theory, there is a statute out there that says that a spouse potentially can be responsible for paying debts, and something with like family members as well. But those are rarely enforced. And
I think those debts would be more if they've accrued debt together, as in maybe credit card debt or a mortgage or something like that.
I mean, it's clearly marital debt. I mean, it's distributable. Yeah. It's distributable in a divorce. But no, I don't think she's under any compulsion to pay. And worse, they can't execute his, even if they get a judgment against him, they can't execute it against the marital property.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
On the other hand, I mean, how long is he going to be in jail?
11 years.
So she's probably not planning on staying married, is she?
Yes.
She is planning on staying married.
That's I guess the plan.
That's the plan. That's the plan for the first 3.5 years and 6 days.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it gets old really quick. I'm sure going to visit at the prison.
Right. So I mean, once they get divorced, then that could be collectible against his portion of the marital estate.
Yeah.
So maybe they want to figure something out. I don't know. But It doesn't sound to me, again, just on what limited information I have, that she has a legal obligation to pay. I'm certain that those lawyers will try to educate her if they have a better version of it, of why she has to pay. I mean, I would always say and I tell other lawyers to do this sometimes, when somebody tells you something, if another lawyer says something, ask them, say, show me. Write them a letter and say, you're telling me that she has to pay, that she's obliged. Show me the document or the case law or the statute, and I'll gladly advise my client accordingly. But based on what limited knowledge of the law I have, I'm taking a different position than you. So please educate me, sir.
Yes. Right. I follow you.
All right.
Sounds like exactly what I told her I should get paid somehow.
You bill her $150, but make sure she pays you. Right. Maybe you get it up front before you tell her what you found out.
All right. Thank you.
All right, brother. Take care.
Yep. Bye-bye.
540-0580. Maria, you're on with Carl and Steve. What's going on?
Hi, I have a question. I am on my father's deed for his property. Have been on it for probably 20 years. From an estate tax purpose, he's well into his 80s. If something happens to him, my question is, does the property actually just come to me and they take his name off? Am I paying estate taxes even though I'm listed in his will as well?
Well, if you've been on the... Oh, go ahead, Steve.
Well, yeah, if you're on the deed and he passes away, then you'll own the property. Generally, what happens is if you have an attorney that handles the estate, he'll take a death certificate and they'll redo the deed and send it up to the recorder's office in the county where the property's located, and that deed then will be in your name alone.
Okay, because he recently was just asking me, do you think it's a problem that my name's on the deed? I said, I really have no idea because it's been on there for 20 years. Right after my mother passed away, he put me on there.
It doesn't make a difference for estate purposes. It's going to pass to you. It's a gift done a long time ago, et cetera, so it doesn't look like a fraudulent transfer to beat the nursing home or anything. Here's the only little rub. The thing that you guys don't have is what I was just talking about with the other caller, which is protections of tenants in the entirety, because you're not husband and wife, you're just father-daughter. So if your dad runs me over and I sue him, I can take 1/2 of his interest in that property.
Okay.
Because for purposes of evaluating, and if that property is worth $100,000, we would just say you each own $50,000 in it. Uh-huh. So the only downside is either one of you could encumber that property through a liability theory, and that's the only downside. As long as he has adequate auto insurance, and as long as you have adequate auto insurance, and you're not otherwise, doing crazy things or about to go bankrupt, I wouldn't really see a need to change anything. But I just throw that out there as the one little rub that when he was married, he had with his wife was that tenants in the entirety protection. You guys don't have that. So even if you're joint tenants with right of survivorship, okay, for purposes of debts or third parties, we can still sever your interest and make you tenants in common and take away part of that interest in the property. Okay. All right?
All right. Thanks for your help. I greatly appreciate it.
I'm sure everybody out there want to know about tenants in common and tenants in the entirety and joint right of survivor. But really, that's a little rub, and people forget that because, Steve, and I don't know if you've seen this or not, but I've seen people put their kids on their deed as a husband and wife, and they don't realize that by doing that, they're at least making some of that property vulnerable to the children's debt, and worse, if they don't title it right, like 50% as tenants in the entirety for the husband and wife as tenants in common with the 50% for the child, and they just put all three of them on the deed as tenants in common or tenants with joint right of survivorship, it's not even clear that they created an entirety's interest in the couple's interest.
Exactly.
So, I can prattle on about that, but it is kind of interesting. Let's see. Well, it's interesting to me. Carlos, you're on the air. Carlos.
Yes.
What's going on?
Good. How are you, sir?
Good.
I have a question. My ex-girlfriend 3 years ago, she made a false allegation and about something, and she had me arrested, and I have to go through ERD and everything. It was expensed within 6-8 month period. But that day of the incident, the Patriot News they made an article about what happened, and after. I went through ERD and everything. I contacted them. I told them I don't have any record. Everything was expensed. You need to remove that thing from online. But the guy basically he didn't want to. He argued with me, saying, "No, we're not deleting that thing from the website." So that thing still looks there, and it's not good for my reputation. I just don't know what to do about it.
Well, that's interesting because it depends on what they reported. Most newspapers, if you read the article closely, will say, according to police or according to witnesses, this is what happened. They don't say this is what happened. So they're not reporting what happened. They're reporting what people say happened. You follow me?
Yes.
And so they have to actually know that it's false. And, of course, here's my next thing. You took ARD. So ARD is a diversionary program that a lot of lawyers, for instance, like myself included, would say, even if you're innocent, just take ARD for the guaranteed expungement. But I might, if I'm on their side of the fence, say, hey, if you were so innocent, you could have just said, hey, give me a jury trial, baby, and I'll be acquitted.
I mean, I hired a lawyer, back then. He convinced me to take Artie. I was going to fight the incident.
Right. No, I understand that, but the Patriot News doesn't have to get involved in that. They just go, hey, listen, for instance, it's not like you were acquitted. You took ARD, which is a diversionary program. I'm just trying to say from their standpoint is there's nothing to prove that the allegations are absolutely false. And they probably, again, if you reread it closely, they'll say according to police reports or according to this witness or that witness. And so they're just reporting what other people are saying. So if it's false, you got to get those people to recant, right?
Yeah, I talked to the guy and I told him I can provide the proof that everything was expunged from I don't have anything in my records.
But that doesn't mean it didn't happen, Carlos. That's what I'm trying to tell you.
Yeah.
I mean that's the rub, right? I mean if I run somebody over and I get acquitted at jury trial, it doesn't mean I didn't run somebody over. It just means I wasn't culpable criminally. And to the extent they're reporting it, I'm not sure how you prove what they're reporting was malicious and that they knew it was maliciously false. When they're just reporting, a lot of news articles start like this. According to Pennsylvania State Police, Carlos recently robbed the, fill in the blank. And the Patriot would go, all we did was do the state police press release. So if it's untrue, go sue the state police. Oh, yeah, by the way, you have a year from when the initial publication, the initial, I should say, slander took place to bring that claim because slander and libel in Pennsylvania, which are forms of defamation, have a 1-year statute of limitations. Now, if it's still being republished on the web, then you could make an argument. But the problem is if it's just being republished, a Patriot article, that doesn't redo your time to sue the underlying people who may have made the original false report. Anyhow, 540-0580. I'll see you guys after the break. Oh, different noise. 540-0580. You know what happens? It's kind of like if you're playing tennis and somebody says, do you inhale or exhale on your serve? And then, of course, you flub the next serve because, well, you're trying to think about it. 540-0580. Carl Rominger here answering your legal questions. Want to remind you to get your free will. Go to weekendappointment.com. Download the free will kit. Fill it out, send it in, get an appointment with a real live lawyer and get a free will. Or you can just call my office and make an appointment, and then I'll charge you for it. Harry, you're on the air. Harry.
Hello, are you there? Can you hear me, Carl?
I can hear you.
Okay, great. My question is because you said something with Bob Durgan about 2 weeks ago regarding an employer policy, whether it's fair or unfair, you accept it when you sign your paycheck. And in my position, we have direct deposit, but they want you to sign the timesheet, even though we're on salary. It seems inconsequential. However, they do pass out policies during the month, and whether I agree or disagree, they still want that timesheet signed. I think that makes me now accepting their premise or their policy. And I'm just wondering how true that is because I don't want to sign something I don't agree with.
Right. Well, here's the problem. I mean, Pennsylvania is a work-at-will state, and the employer can basically change the rules anytime they want. And the only reason they have you acknowledge the change is so that later you can't say you weren't aware of it. But long and short of it, if I want to change the rules as we go, I can.
Oh, well, because they sent out a new policy change. We're going over to their standard. And they said effective, they handed us this letter on the 26th of the month saying effective the 1st of the month. And I don't agree with everything, and they left a lot of things void.
Right.
So I'm afraid of if I sign this timesheet that they want me to, that I'm accepting this thing that they passed around. And it's kind of like a catch-22 because there's a policy that they said during a month and you don't remember it and you sign your timesheet thinking that's all you're liable for, and it's really not true.
Right. So, yeah, and I mean, your remedy is to find a new employer.
I had a feeling you'd say that. And really, I want to, and that's my second part of the question is I asked them to give me specifics on it, which they replied this month. Of course, it was a little bit vague. I'm planning on retiring next year. I had mentioned that to them, and all their answers are based on when I retire. and that is basically my accrued vacation time and comp days. I'll get paid for that, and they're saying that I would be better using them because they want me all rested up for work. But my thing is I want to have a cushion when I leave, and I don't want to lose that time. However, by them saying repeatedly, when you retire, I may just leave the company like you just suggested, but I don't know now if I'm stuck saying that I have to retire in order for them to pay that.
Yeah, and now, here's the difference. Now, if we're just talking about like employment terms, it's one thing. We're talking about vesting of retirements, et cetera, then there may be quasi-contract there. So we need to see your handbook, your manual, and all the adjustments and changes. But long and short of it is, I guess you keep your head down, try to do everything you need to do, and hopefully get what you deserve.
Right. And there again, based on what you said, there are no handbooks because the president says there are no written procedures because he wants it as a living thing, so it's very flexible. But this is an example of where it's only to his favor, and that's the only way he does things. So right now, I think now you reinforce why I'm afraid to sign the timesheet, and I guess the bottom line question is if I refuse to sign a timesheet, what recourse does he have because he has nothing in writing saying I have to?
Well, he can just fire you, and then you can say, well, it wasn't for a willful disobedience, and therefore they got to pay you unemployment.
Okay.
That's about it.
That sounds a little more comforting, although I do want to have another job. But when you get to be my age, it's not as easy anymore. So,
no, and in this day and age, I think a lot of people have the same feeling. It's tough to. A few years back, you could, tell your boss to take this job and shove it and be rehired at 2 p.m. the same day.
Right.
Right now, if they fire you on Tuesday, it might be 58 weeks later until you find somebody who can hire you. Yeah.
Okay, and can you repeat that reason again? That they fired me with really no just cause? Is that basically? Yeah,
no just cause and no willful misconduct. The point is, if I fire you, I can come into work one day and just go, you know what? I never did like red hair. You're fired, and I can do that. I can't come into work. But you get unemployment. If I come into work and I see that you're making photocopies of personal flyers to hand out, and basically a form of theft, I can fire you for that, and then that will result in no unemployment check for you.
Okay, I don't know if I'm allowed to ask the final question here.
Sure.
But assuming I get fired and all that, and there's all sorts of intangibles, would you be able to help me out with this?
Yeah, we've actually helped people before with it, and so long and short of it, I can't tell you any specific cases, but we've negotiated some resolutions with some pretty large companies. The problem with smaller companies a lot of times is that they're usually less flexible than the bigger ones when it comes to working it out.
Okay.
All right.
Okay, Carl, I appreciate your help, and it's always good talking with you.
Hey, you too. Take care.
Thank you.
540-0580. Jay, you're on with Carl, and Steve's hanging out here in the background.
Yeah. Hello. I guess this question is probably more apropos for when you're on the Durgan show. Speaking of FUBAR, I guess I was thinking of the Pennsylvania legislature. And their latest, I guess this issue with bankruptcy, and for the city, and I don't know if it's right or wrong, good or bad, but I do kind of question, haven't other cities declared bankruptcy, and how can they legally they can, but what reason can they give for saying, well, Harrisburg is not allowed to declare bankruptcy?
Well, I'll tell you what's going on.
Capital city?
No, I'll tell you what's really going on. I know what's really going on. Come on, this is easy. Big money. Big money.
I know they're, I'm sure that's...
Listen, in bankruptcy, the bondholders are going to take a haircut. Okay, that's a technical term for you're not going to get paid all your money. That's what they call it. So, Greece is giving haircuts on sovereign debt right now, okay, to some of the banks. Well, what we would do in a bankruptcy is the bankruptcy judge will ultimately approve a plan where the bondholders are going to have to take less money. That means Harrisburg has to pay back less money, which means they need to not tax their residents as hard, as long, or as fast, okay? But the big money belongs to the bondholders, right? And they would rather that Harrisburg go through Act 47 and that the state force them into sucking in the money any way they can. even if it comes from state funds. So you have the wholly bought legislature, right, going, well, we don't really want to see the bondholders take. Well, they're not going to say that. Oh, but that's what's really going on. The big money interests, the big finance banks, the big guys don't want Harrisburg to go bankrupt because they don't want to take a haircut. And you know what? For a couple $100 million, they'll spend some money in Harrisburg on the lobbying, right?
Oh, of course.
So that's where we're really at.
Okay. I mean, you know, it's obvious to me that there's people that are kind of bought and paid for, and I, of course, have gotten to the point where I feel just about every politician above maybe a local level.
Well, let me tell you something. At the local level, politicians can do a lot more injustice, trust me. But here's what I'll say. I will say this. I'll say that the other problem you're running into is that Harrisburg has no political power at the end of the day because they are just a creature of the state, right?
Yeah.
So the state can go ahead and say, well, you know, here's what you can and can't do with the vested political power. So what they did was they amended Act 47 to say that cities of the third class, which is magically Harrisburg and maybe one other, I mean, you know, can't file bankruptcy until July of 2012. What that does is create a situation where the bondholders know they're safe.
What I guess, you know, it's a little frustrating because I'm looking for a politician that's looking out for the little guys, and they just. Well,
nobody's looking out for the little guy in this one because Well, first of all, the mayor's inept.
Well, I don't disagree with that.
And the council finally came around and did what they should have done a long time ago, which is go ahead and authorize a bankruptcy. I mean, maybe if they'd authorized it 8 months ago and not even filed it, but said we authorized it to be filed in 15 days, imagine how fast the bondholders would have come to the table. Now that it's filed, they're going to try to unfile it, but guarantee you this is going to actually mix up the pot a little bit any which way. Their legal argument, by the way, seems to be that Act 47 was amended after Harrisburg entered into Act 47, and therefore the amendment barring third-class cities, the retroactivity does not apply to Harrisburg because they're already in Act 47 at the time. Makes for an interesting legal argument, and I think the bankruptcy court is ultimately going to decide it, although federal courts can remand those questions to the state courts. So maybe they'll send it to the Pennsylvania Supreme Court for an answer.
As I said, I don't know whether, you know, if it's good, bad. I can't make a judgment. I just kind of wonder if...
I think the bankruptcy is a beautiful idea. Listen, bankruptcy has helped a gazillion businesses. In fact, when we come back, I want to talk about this with public education for a few minutes. So I'm going to take a break, Jay. Okay. I'm going to let you go. I'm going to take Nancy, and then I'm going to... Just stay tuned because I want to hear what you... Maybe call back and tell me what you think about this, about public education. All right?
Okay, fine. Thanks.
540-0580, Carl Rominger here, weekend appointment, going into the break. I don't think the Preparation H ad has ever run before until my show, but... All right, 540-0580.
I'm glad I'm here.
Yeah, Steve, I think that was for you. That's a shout-out for you. I'm going to take a couple calls, but actually I want to say something about this whole public education. The governor comes out with a program, okay, and he says... Oh, we're going to let the poor kids, they get vouchers and then they can go to the good schools. But the good schools don't have to take the poor kids if they don't want to. So, okay, we already see the handwriting on the wall, right? Yes, my white suburban school is going to start accepting anybody from the city who wants. Now, let's just be real about how this is actually going to play out. Every school in the suburbs is going to go, oh, we don't have any room. We can't take the vouchers. Oh, maybe we'll take the vouchers, Listen, West Hollywood kids are just not going to 90210. It's just the way it is, okay? But here's how it breaks down. It's a good idea in theory, create competition amongst the schools. But here's the thing that's always missing. How do the schools fail? Because in competition, in real capitalism, because politicians are always like, oh, if we can just bring competition to this and competition to that, it'll all be better. And if government just runs like a competition in capitalism, it'll all be better. Well, guess what? Every restaurant that opens fails, except for a very small percentage of them who continue on almost 5 years, and then most of those fail anyhow. And what happens to them? They sell off everything they own, they go bankrupt, they get open in a new location. My point is, any system of competition amongst public institutions has to allow them to fail. And if they can't fail, which means be shut down, destroyed, and reorganized, just like we do through the various forms of bankruptcy. There's a Chapter 11 bankruptcy, right? We've got Chapter 9 for Harrisburg. We've got Chapter 13 reorganizations. My point being is, if you don't have a mechanism for the schools to fail and literally fail and disappear and be replaced, which we don't, then competition will never work. Agree with me, Steve, or disagree?
Yep, I agree.
I mean, and that's the fallacy. They give all this lip service to creating competition and how that's going to work, but competition only works if anybody can fail. And if nobody can fail, then there's nobody who can replace them. And that's why these bloated, terribly run institutions will continue to exist forever, because there's no mechanism to shut them down. Hey, we're shutting down the Philadelphia school district today, and we're just going to wait and see who replaces it. Because that's the other problem in capitalism. Sometimes needs aren't being served until somebody moves in to do it. And there are times when there's gaps in the ability of private industry because of failures or lack of capital or tight credit markets, etc. So if they really want to bring competition to schools and public life, they've got to go the whole way, and they never will. So this whole plan for vouchers will always fail in the long run. And if any of you callers want to argue with me, bring it on. Nancy, you're on the air.
Hello.
Hey.
Hey. Back in spring of this year, when I wasn't home,
okay,
a woman trespassed on our property carrying a concealed weapon, and my husband was home. He threw her out, told her he didn't want her here, and she promptly left and went and called the police and said that he committed a felony against her.
Okay.
Her word against his. We had an attorney we weren't happy with, and now we don't know what to do. We don't know how to choose an attorney because this is apparently a very serious thing, and we need to know how do you make a decision? How do I find someone who's going to represent him the right way?
Well, there's no exact answer to that. And what I mean by that is, obviously, attorneys are a very personal relationship, particularly in serious cases, large civil cases, major criminal matters. You want to have somebody that fits what your comfort level is. So some people want an attorney who's a bomb thrower. Some people want an attorney who's very conciliatory. Some people want their attorney to be their best friend. Some people want their attorney to hate them. So it all depends on how you view what that relationship should be. But what should your attorney be able to do? Well, if it's a serious criminal case, you want somebody who, A, has been to criminal court before, B, has experience in rape and sex cases, and C, has tried a lot of cases. And I'm a little biased that way because I've tried, I think, over 100 and maybe 110 jury trials at this point in my career, which is a lot more than other lawyers I know with this many years of practice. But the reason I'm a little biased on that is if you try a lot of cases, you know what's a good case and what's a bad case. You know what works and what doesn't work, and all those sorts of things. So I would look for somebody with a lot of trial experience, a lot of experience in those areas, who has some connection to the area where it occurred. And what I mean by that is, I practice in the mid-state. Philadelphia is not my usual bailiwick, for instance, so I might be a little lost on the procedure down there because everything's a little different. On the other hand, I've been hired to go out across the state a couple times over the years, particularly because in some little rural county they want to bring somebody in who's from out of town because for some reason there's a perceived advantage to that by the a client. And I sometimes think that's true because they know that you're not going to be co-opted. And sometimes in the little tiny counties you get the feeling like everybody is, on the same team, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
So that's always a problem. Not maybe that's more of a perception too, but nonetheless, you come in from out of town, they're not gonna be married to your brother-in-law or anything. So I don't know. Those are some thoughts. The other thing is cost. I sometimes laugh about this. I've quoted fees to clients before, and when they don't hire me, I find out later they hired somebody who was a lot more expensive because they thought, I wasn't charging enough, therefore I can't be that good. And I want to say to them, well, you should have just told me that was your philosophy. I would have just quintupled my quote and made you feel really good about me. But there's no correlation there either. So
how do we find someone? How do you go about?
I would meet with a couple attorneys and see what they have to say about the case and see how knowledgeable they seem and what kind of strategies they would employ. If you came in and saw me and sat down, I would discuss with you where we were at. Now, I'm just going to thinking out loud, here's one of my concerns. My concern is, obviously, your husband says he didn't do it, but it's her word against his, right?
Absolutely, yes.
And, of course, the question is, why did she make it up? So we're going to have to really dig for a defense there in terms of why she would make it up, because if I'm on a jury, that's what everybody always wants to know. Why are they making it up? If I can figure out a reason or an angle or I can catch them in a lie, and obviously I also think that aggressive representation earlier in the case is important. I get handed a lot of cases where another attorney has waived the preliminary hearing for no reason at all that I can discern, and now I can't get a shot at the witness, right? I want to see what this person's like. You know, sometimes if I see somebody just hanging out in a courtroom that's going to be a witness in a case, I'll go up and accost them a little bit just to see how they act, because I want to get a feel for them to know what they're going to be like on the stand later. Yeah, there's just a lot that goes into it. So I guess I don't know if I'm helping you or not. I'm just trying to tell you you're going to have to find somebody that fits. And here's the problem. You know, I have to get my car fixed, right?
Yeah.
I don't know what's going on. I mean, the guy comes out and he's, oh, we had to repack the bearings and then we took this off and that off and the connected joints. And I just kind of look at him and smile because I don't know what he's talking about.
Replacing the turn signal fluid?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, your car. He sold me some Shoreline, too. Anyhow, you understand what I'm saying.
Yes.
So come in and see me. I'll sit down and give you an explanation what I think I could do. Go talk to about 2 other lawyers. I'll give you the names of 2 other good ones that I know that I would recommend.
Okay.
And you can figure it out from there.
We will do that.
All right. You take care.
Thank you.
540-0580. Steve, what do you think? How do you figure out what lawyer to hire?
I think you're right. I think hiring a lawyer is like hiring somebody to work on your car. You have to, at some point, have a conversation with them and then take a leap of faith. The other thing is that if things aren't going well with your attorney, there's nothing keeping you there. There's no reason why you can't change attorneys. But when you're dealing with criminal cases like this, and Carl, you handle these. I don't. I don't do criminal law. You want to make the right decision, obviously, out of the chute.
Right. And you hope so. And of course, the other thing is, I mean, if you go to court, I shouldn't say if the judge is yelling at your lawyer, I mean, you can look at that 2 ways. That means either your lawyer's an idiot, or maybe your lawyer's doing a good job and the judge is just yelling at him. But I get yelled at every once in a while, and I know the client looks at you like, well, why is the judge yelling at you? Is this good or bad? And you want to be like, well, the judge is wrong, and I can't quite convince him. And so the point is. But it depends. I mean, if your lawyer also seems prepared, I'll give you a hint. If you go to court and the guy doesn't have a yellow pad, right, and no pen, that's a good clue that maybe he doesn't really know what's going on.
When I go to court, I have a yellow pad and a pen, and I make sure my client has one too.
and you know what? Funny thing about that is, of course, looking good doesn't. Just because he has a nice tie, a nice car, and a yellow pad doesn't mean he or she knows what they're doing either. All right, guys, we're going to stay here through the break. When we come back. We'll do 1 more hour of your questions live, 540-0580. Carl Rominger here at WHP 580 answering your legal questions, 540-0580. See you after the break.